As a biomedical engineering BS/MS student, content creator, and business owner, I think I've tried almost every productivity hack out there. And in this video, I'm going to summarize some of my favorites, several of them very popular, many of them evidence-based, and all of them used by me on a daily basis. And I really hope that this straightforward list will save you time as you try to be your highest performing self. I thought it would be appropriate that I start out with one of the most popular techniques out there that's usually in the context of students, but I've certainly applied it outside of school, and it's called the Pomodoro Technique. And I'm going to be using my iPad so that I don't mess up the definitions of each of these techniques. The Pomodoro Technique is a time management method that involves breaking work down into 25-minute intervals separated by short breaks. It aims to reduce the impact of interruptions, improve focus, and increase productivity. And the steps can be outlined as the following. Step number 1, you pick a task. Step number 2, you set a 25-minute timer. Step number 3, you work on your task until the timer is up. Step number 4, you take a 5-minute break. Step number 5, every 4 Pomodoros, you take a longer 15 to 30-minute break. Now, do I believe that in general, this concept is very effective? Absolutely. And has it worked for millions and millions of people out there? Absolutely. And so I would recommend it, but has it worked really effectively for me personally? Not so much. Especially in school with the classes that had more complex concepts, the Pomodoro Technique and its 25 minutes didn't give me sufficient time to get in a good working flow state. Now, what is a good flow state? That is one in which you are so locked in on a task, you are so focused, you are so dialed in that you don't even recognize that the time is passing by. I think we've all experienced this before, and that's where we are the most productive because it's not as draining as it would be otherwise. So that's where we want to get to. But the Pomodoro Technique didn't give me the sufficient time to get there. I personally needed more, closer to 45 minutes. But what did the Pomodoro Technique do really well for me? It actually helped me prevent a lot of my procrastination. Why? Because it made the initial task a lot less daunting than it would be otherwise. So, for example, it's a lot easier for me to think of, okay, I will go to my desk and study for 25-minute increments. All I gotta do is get that first 25 minutes versus studying for 4 hours straight, right? And so maybe if I took a step back, it would be the same amount of total studying. I would have done 25-minute block increments and it would have a total of 4 hours together. But because I wasn't thinking of it as all 4 hours in one run, it was a lot easier for me to get started. And right, procrastination is associated with the fear or with the hesitation of just getting started. And that has done a really good job of that. But something that I found that was even better with my procrastination, something that helped me a lot more, was this next technique that we're going to be talking about. The 5-minute rule is a productivity technique that involves committing to work on a task for just 5 minutes before deciding whether to continue or to move on to a different task. Now let's give a real life example of this and look at the 3 simple steps that the 5-minute rule would call you to do. So let's give an example that you need to write a paper, right? But you are constantly being distracted by your phone, by people, or whatever the case may be. These are the 3 simple steps. Number 1, set a timer on your phone or laptop for 5 minutes. Number 2, when the timer starts, you begin working. Give it your all, even if you don't feel like working. After all, you can stop at literally 5 minutes if you like. Number 3, when the timer goes off, see how you feel. The chances are you've overcome the most significant hurdle, which is to start. And now you're on your way to finishing what you started. For me, I found that 9 out of 10 times, if I can get the first 5 minutes started, I have no problem completing the task in its entirety. I really do believe that my whole life I've dealt with procrastination, not because the task is actually really difficult or really complex. It's just because I overthink. I overthink like crazy. I think about everything to its finest detail, and that can be one of the biggest inhibitors of success for me, right? Because I just won't get started on something because I overcomplicate it more than it needs to be. The 5-minute rule has completely changed my life in that sense. And I don't use a digital timer. I actually use like an analog, like an actual physical timer that I bought off of Amazon, and it does wonders for me. So whenever I have a big task at hand, I'll literally just turn on that timer because it's already set to 5 minutes, and I'll just get started. And after the first 5 minutes, when it goes ring, like 9 out of 10 times I'll finish the task, right? And so a great example of this is currently I'm taking a biocomputational class with modeling specific physiological behaviors, right? And so it's a very, very difficult class, and I'm already bad at programming as it is. And so to get me started on watching a 3-hour lecture and on an assignment that would probably take me close to 15 hours in total is very, very hard, right? It's very hard for me to get started on it. I will literally start the timer. I'm looking at my desk because I literally have the timer. It'll be for 5 minutes, and I'll go ahead and watch the lecture, and I usually have no problem finishing. So it is a game changer. If you deal with procrastination, try the 5-minute rule, and I would highly recommend just getting an analog physical timer that you can just carry around with you, and I think it'll do you wonders. Have night alarms. I know we all have our morning alarms, and the benefits of those are obvious. Continue doing that. But when it comes to protecting and prioritizing our sleep because of how important it is for neuroplasticity, aka how you learn, your physical and your mental health, your overall performance, like we learn about all these things in neuroengineering, and we learn about all the different studies that were conducted. And the benefits of protecting your sleep and prioritizing your sleep is just undeniable, right? But a morning alarm clock, I don't believe is sufficient to protect or prioritize that sleep. A night alarm clock in combination with a morning one, I think is the best method in terms of doing that. So what does a night alarm clock do? That is your reminder to wrap up deep late night combos, to wrap up work, to wrap up the movie you're watching, to wrap up any shenanigans that you're doing. Because of the fact that so many times during night we lose sight of the time, right? Because a lot of us associate with that time to be our rest or our playtime. And so that's not when we're necessarily looking at the clock. But it comes at a heavy price, because if you're just looking up and you're like, oh my gosh, it's 3 a.m., then you go and try to go to sleep, you're probably not waking up in time that you said that you would wake up at the next day, right? And it throws off your schedule for the next day. And if you don't fix it that day after, then it's gonna have that domino effect for the remainder of the week, right? So that night alarm clock should be there to remind you that, all right, turn off all of those distractions, mute your notifications, put on sleep mode on your iPhone, go and do your skincare routine, go and brush your teeth, and go to bed, right? And I think that, again, to reap all the benefits of having good quality sleep, you need to be ensured that not only are you waking up at the right time, but you're going to bed at the right time as well. So for me personally, I use 2 night alarm clocks. The first night alarm clock is for me to do just that in terms of wrapping up the current task that I'm doing. And then the second alarm clock is no phone, right? Like that's the time where I don't go on my phone anymore in terms of using social media or anything like that. And so those 2 alarm clocks really help me get into the right mental state to go to bed, and not just go to bed, but be able to go to sleep right away and to have that quality sleep that I'm looking for. And so I really do think that a night alarm clock in combination with a morning alarm clock is really the way to go. The delegation technique is a time management method that involves assigning tasks to other people more capable in terms of 2 things, either expertise or bandwidth, in order to increase overall productivity. And shout out to my friend Liam, who helped me really understand the importance of this. And if you've never done this before, I would highly recommend you sit down and figure out what 1 hour of your time costs. I'm so serious about this. So pause this video. There's a ton of YouTube videos out there that go over this process and can help you. But it is so imperative, because it's only then that you can make informed decisions in terms of where to allocate your time that you get the most out of it. I know that there's that cliche saying of time is money, but it really does apply here, right? Because once you understand that your time is limited, your time is finite, and also that you have a set of skills and also interests, right? Like you might not be interested in doing certain tasks, and that's okay too. And you have to consider all those factors when you're deciding on, is this task necessary for me to take on personally, or can I delegate it to someone more capable with the 2 things in terms of expertise or bandwidth in order to increase that overall productivity. And pharmaceutical companies are actually a really great example of how to execute delegation effectively on a really large scale, right? And for those that are a little bit unfamiliar with the pharmaceutical pipeline, I got you covered, don't you worry. I'll explain this in a really easy to understand manner. If you're looking at all the beginning steps, you're looking at something called early drug discovery. When you look at the end steps, you're looking at animal studies, clinical studies, and the logistical steps in order to actually get the drug on the market. Now, guess how long it takes to go from the beginning steps to the end steps? You can leave your guesses in the comments. 10 to 15 years. 10 to 15 years. And sometimes, actually a lot of times, it takes even longer than that. Now, why does it take so long? It's because there are an ample number of intermediate steps between the beginning and the end. Now, if a pharmaceutical company was to do every little step themselves, it would be practically impossible to get that drug on the market. So this is what they do. Number one, they recognize that anything outside of their subject matter expertise is not worth allocating resources in-house to complete whatever task that may be. And so they will delegate, they will outsource those tasks to a third party that has the two things that we were just talking about in terms of the bandwidth to complete it and the expertise to complete it. And so, yeah, could a pharmaceutical company save money up front by doing those tasks in-house? Probably. But a successful company has to take a more holistic approach to their decision making and think about the long term. Right? And so they understand that they have a finite number of employees who have a finite number of hours that could be working on projects. If you bring certain scientists onto a project that's outside of their expertise, one, it's going to take them longer. And two, now you got to find replacements for the work that they were doing prior to you moving them, right? And so delegation is such an important productivity tip. And it doesn't just apply to big pharma companies, right? It applies to any type of business endeavor and any type of group work. It's imperative to make best use out of the talent on your team, especially if you're a leader. I know that if you're watching this, you most likely want to be a leader. The batching technique is a time management method that involves grouping similar tasks together and completing them in a specific period of time, rather than switching between different tasks throughout the duration of the day. And this is important because context switching, which refers to the active shifting your focus from one task to another, is actually a very disruptive and time-consuming process, as it requires the individual to reorient, to refocus every time to that new task. So avoid this at all costs. If productivity matters to you, avoid this in every way that you possibly can. And these are some ways that you can apply this right now. If you're the type of person to sporadically respond to emails throughout the day, stop that. Just allocate an hour of your time where you respond to all emails. While you have your browser up, while you have gmail.com already up, while you're already in that zone, you might as well draft up the emails to everyone else. If you're the type to run errands across multiple days, stop that. Allocate one day, several hours of that day to running errands. Why? Because you're already going to be in your car. You're already going to be at a convenience store, and a lot of convenience stores are already next to each other. So you might as well take advantage of that and make it as much of an efficient process as possible. Another example, well, if you're the type of individual to clean sporadically throughout the duration of a week, stop that. Utilize one day where you take the time to allocate a few hours to cleaning. And because you'll already have your products out, because you already have your mop or your vacuum out, it's a lot more efficient for you to complete that in its entirety in one specified time. Does that make sense? Good. Time blocking. I don't think this one needs as much of an explanation as the other ones, but a 10 out of 10, a must. If you're not scheduling using a calendar, you are out of your mind. Pause the video and start doing it right now. Like, you have to. And I'm gonna go over all the reasons for this here in a little bit. I could probably make an entire video on time blocking solely on its own, but I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible, go over how to do it, as well as some of the important things to note. So let's begin with how to do it. You can take a monthly, weekly, or daily approach to this, but I actually believe probably the best method utilizes all three. So this is how. You first start with a general monthly outline, and this will have your reoccurring tasks. So if you're a student, these are your classes. You know that you're gonna have certain classes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This is your time to start off by creating that monthly outline, starting with those classes. Then you do weekly revisions. Weekly revisions consist of any task or obligation or responsibility that extends across multiple days. And so if you know that you have a client that you need to get their work done within a specific block of time in the second week of the month, then you block that out. How many hours you need per day for that week, that's how you block it out. That's your weekly revisions. Then if you do daily revisions, those are if you had something come up or you just needed extra time to complete a task that you didn't foresee. Those are reserved for those daily revisions. And I really do believe that time blocking is probably the most important, or at least one of the most important within this list. And there are a ton of templates, there are a ton of tutorials on YouTube that go over how to do this. And so in your own time, do that. But before that, let me just go over some of the key points to time blocking so that you don't have the wrong idea of what time blocking is. People hate the idea of scheduling within a calendar because they think that they'll be too rigid and they don't want to be like a robot and they want more freedom in their life. They want time to be spontaneous. No, I can't get over how silly that is, because time blocking is not just about blocking out time for homework or blocking out time for client work. No, you need to block out time for rest as well as play too, right? And so a lot of us, especially if you're watching this video and you're following me, you're very much keen on how to be as productive as possible, right? Like, we are individuals that work a lot and we love the process of working. And now we want to figure out how best to do this efficiently so we don't burn out. Time blocking is how you do this, because a lot of us, when we are resting or playing, we feel guilty. Leave your comments right now if you agree with me. When you rest or you play, you feel super anxious or guilty because you're like, oh, I could be better using my time working on this or working on that. And so you don't even allow yourself to fully rest. And that's why when you say that you have those rest days, you're not actually feeling much better the next day because you're probably feeling anxious the entire day. And so when you time block, and you time block with a monthly outline first, then you do weekly revisions and then daily revisions, you know the time that you're allocating for rest and play is entirely okay. And so you allow yourself, you give yourself permission to give your 100% to the relationships or to whatever activity that you're doing for rest and play, right? So that's one point to mention, because I know a lot of people have the wrong idea of what time blocking is meant for. Number two, if you're going to be doing these daily revisions, do whatever you possibly can to make them the night prior and not the day of. Because us as human beings, we make thousands of decisions every single day. Some of them we don't even know that we're making. They're subconscious, right? But it's actually within those decision-making processes that we hesitate, that we second guess. And these things delay us from actually getting the task started and ultimately completed. This is what a lot of us procrastinators, me included, struggle with. And so the great advantage of time blocking is it doesn't even expose you to the opportunity to second guess or to hesitate. And that's why it's so important to do it the night prior, so that on the day of, you know exactly what you're doing and there is no delay from you getting those tasks completed. Number three, time yourself. Too many times we allocate 3 hours to writing an essay, only to find ourselves actually writing that essay needing 7 hours to complete it. And this doesn't only ruin that day's schedule, but it most certainly will bleed into the following day and has the potential to affect your entire week's schedule. And after having talked to a lot of my friends, this is actually where a lot of our anxiety stems from. Because in our heads, we're capable of working nonstop, right? Like, we're capable of being productive to the max. And so we will pack our schedules. But we'll get into Wednesday and Thursday and realize, oh my goodness, we're still trying to complete Tuesday's tasks. Or, oh my goodness, we're still trying to complete Monday's tasks. And it can most certainly provoke a lot of anxiety because you start second guessing what you're capable of. You start second guessing if you're being efficient or productive. When in reality, you probably are. And the only issue that you had was you mismanaged how much time to allocate per task. And it's not your fault necessarily, because how could you possibly know if you don't actually time yourself for each task? And I know that that's not a habit that might come naturally to us, but I promise you, if you start getting the habit of doing that. So, for example, if you are writing an essay again for a specific course, write this down, have a certain part within your Excel sheet or whatever the case may be to put in how much time it took. And just bring up a timer or use your phone to time you. And over time, after you see how many inputs you had into that Excel sheet, you'll be able to average that time and have a much better idea of how much you should be allocating to writing an essay or a specific task for a specific course. And this is only for the academics, but it can apply to anything, right? And if you treat it like that, I promise you get so good at time blocking that when you hear a task that might not be something that you might have necessarily done prior, you'll just easily, automatically be able to block a certain amount of time within your schedule and still be able to get everything else done within a period of a week or a month. And I really believe the people that can effectively time block are the ones that have the least amount of anxiety when it comes to the productivity world, and they're also the most productive. So please start time blocking. Stack micro wins. Let's be honest. Let's have a sense of accountability here. Probably many of us aren't the most disciplined individuals, and it requires discipline to reach a lot of these massive goals that we have in our lives, because it's only through consistency over a long period of time that we'll see those results. But the mistake that a lot of people make when they want to be more productive is they'll jump right into the deep end and try to take on these massive goals, which will actually only discourage them even further, because one, the results won't come as quickly as they would like, and number two, now you have no proof that you're actually capable of achieving something if you constantly fail these bigger goals. So stack micro wins. I promise you, this has been a life changer for me, not just with my profession, not just with school, but literally in every facet of life. We have goals, and it's important that you're able to take that goal and break it down to a small goal that you are actually willing to do. Actually, in fact, go so far that it's laughable how easy that goal is to achieve. And so one example that we always talk about on this channel is making your bed, right? But let's say that initially your goal was to be the best partner you could possibly be to your significant other. A very admirable goal. But you know that you being disorganized leads you to being undependable, and that's a trait that your partner doesn't like. So you want to change that. But if you break that down a little bit, you get to, maybe I should start cleaning my room every single day, because I know that I only clean my room sporadically, and by then it's a mess. Maybe that's a place to start. But you're like, actually, that would be a little bit too big of a stretch for me, because cleaning your room every single day is not a trivial matter. But let's break that down even further. I don't even make my bed every single day. A lot of us don't make our beds every single day. So I'm going to start making my bed every single day. And that might be a goal that you laugh at, because it's so small to the point that it's feasible, it's achievable. Now, if you can break down your bigger goals and make them into micro goals and ultimately successfully achieve them, making micro wins, this is going to do two things for you. It's going to build momentum, right? It's going to give you a positive force, allowing you to achieve the second task a little bit easier than the first one, and so on. But number two, it gives you a level of confidence, right? Because you can keep your promises. You've shown to yourself that you can remain committed to those promises long after the emotions in which you initially set them in have subsided. Because in most cases, they will subside before you can actually achieve it, right? And so this is a different approach to life in general that I highly recommend you take. take these massive goals that you have in your life, break them down into micro goals, make them micro wins, and keep your head down, focused on those micro wins. And when you look up, you'll find yourself closer to those extravagant goals then more than you ever were before. I promise. Saving the very best for last. Finding your why. If you can't do this, none of the stuff that I just mentioned matters. None of the stuff I mentioned will carry you to the lifestyle that you've always dreamt of. And even if you're lucky enough to stumble across that dream lifestyle, I guarantee that you won't be able to sustain it. Why? Because life is hard. As simple as that. Life is painful. Life is very difficult. Life is extremely tough, right? The one thing that we can guarantee about life is it's going to hand something pretty soon right in your face that's going to be seemingly impossible to overcome. And I believe it's in those moments that true champions are made. It's in those moments that champions are able to dig really deep down in their souls and remind themselves of their purpose, which serves something much bigger than the individual themselves. Do you understand the importance of that? And so a lot of people talk about motivation. A lot of people talk about inspiration. And it's great to have it, but it's not necessary. And it certainly won't be in your life forever and always, right? These are emotion-based. And what we know about emotions is that they ebb and flow. If you are basing the trajectory of your life based on emotions, something that ebbs and flows, you're in for a very rough ride. And then the other crowd will say, oh, then it's just discipline. Just be disciplined. I would take it a step further, right? I would peel another layer back. And I think when you do that, you find the question of why, of what is your purpose? Why do you do what you do? You see, perspective drives performance every day of the week. How you view what you do affects how you do what you do. And it's only when you can get clarity within that purpose that it gives you a level of confidence, even in the really tough times, that makes you untouchable. Finding clarity in your purpose, finding clarity in your why, finding clarity in your why in terms of why you want to be productive, why did you stay for the entirety of this video, allows you to find direction, allows you to find resiliency, allows you to find and discover a level of courage that you didn't even know existed before, allows you to find contentment in the difficult times as well as the really good times, right? You're not too high, you're not too low. Finding clarity in your purpose is essential. And that'll wrap up another YouTube video. I think this is our fourth one. I've been thoroughly enjoying this process. Again, my goal is to try and aid in any way that I can possibly aid in your journey to achieving your full potential, because you deserve nothing less. And I think that there's so much negativity in this world. And I want to have this page, I want the community that we've built across TikTok, across Instagram, across this YouTube channel and the newsletter to be based on positivity, to be based on encouragement. And if I can guide your life in a way that's both positive and encouraging, that's a really, really cool job to have. So God bless. Thank you all so much, and I love you all.